Radical Jack here. We are in day 38 and I'd like to send a big love out to Green Man Keith, who lost his mum at a good old age in the 90s. I hope everything's going well for you, Keith, over in the English countryside, and that it's all going well for you and your little mission, and lots of prayers from the old Emerald Isle. And yeah, bless your heart, brother. I hope it's a nice, easy transition in all the things that you've got to do, and I hope it all goes well for you. And lots of love, brother. So yeah, we're heading towards well, that Bealtaine is coming. You know, this was the first real warm day of the year. Got some pots prepared for some seeds and so on. And yeah, when I look back at my Paddy's Day outing, my intuition was, I mean, it was new moon, and I was wanting to stay at home and do some planting, you know. But for some reason or other, there was a real heavy force and pull towards that, and I can see now that sometimes it is undoubtedly for the lessons that come thereafter, you know. But now I'm like wishing I had stayed and took care of that new moon planting, you know. And so yeah, this is it. And the thing that comes to mind now is not so much the slippery slope, but I think, yeah, often enough we often think that we can, you know, whether it's drinking or smoking or food abuse, sugar, whatever, you know, all these things, they're like filling a hole, you know. And not to say that medicinally or moderately, any of these things can be all right, you know. There's an obvious debate out there in relation to good and bad. Certainly mass-produced alcohol and tin cans, and you know, there's some serious studies done today in relation to the problems, you know, that people you know, have because of these things and the overuse, and often, you know, not really understanding what it is that is the problem, you know, where I've heard things like alcoholics, you know, are addicted to sugar, which is why they often go for the alcohol, certainly particular types of alcohol as well. So yeah, I'm really homing in on that today, and you know, this kind of I suppose the cloud that was in my head, you know, those moments of indecision, you know, where one minute I feel really high and the next minute I was feeling really low. Definitely something. This thing's shifting, you know. Like even now, this last week, I feel, and maybe it's partly because of the food I put back into my system, you know, like meat and dairy. But there's a lot of phlegm, you know, coming up this last week, and it's brown phlegm, and you know, so it's been the 8th of November since I smoked, and most certainly there's you know, there's a kickback there, you know, in the way that things operate, you know, time wise, you know, how long it takes for certain things to shift, you know. And depending on how long you abuse something, you know, I mean, I've been on and off with tobacco for many years, and I know the road pretty well, you know, but still certain things surprise me, you know, in relation to the time it takes to shift. And so these are all relevant in relation to cloudy heads and withdrawal symptoms, and then making bad decisions, etc. And then you know, one bad decision can lead to another, and so on and so forth. But most importantly, you know, I always come back to this, the mind, and the importance of the mind in relation to, you know, what was done or what is done, you know, and to give yourself the extra, berating and hardship and hard time. There's all sorts of things we can do. Self-flagellation or whatever you want to call it. It's good to forgive yourself, and it's very interesting how this energy works as well in relation to how damned we feel, how damned we were by the ostracization of our culture, the tradition, the church, the fear of God, the priest, there's so many things at play here, and certainly, I suppose the generation after me, the generations, being 48, it's like there's perhaps a lot of people, not have that experience, dealing with the dogmatic conditioning of the church, and school or whatever the case may be, it's different strokes, a lot more freedoms in one way, and then many other things then only waiting to pick up and catch or capture the soul, the spirit, the gut, the mind, the heart, certainly, if you think about the black and white television, I remember our first black and white TV. It's just nuts to think like that we've got such things as what we do today, HD and all this crazy stuff. It's nuts. I mean, I myself have been without television for about 20 years now. On the rare occasion I might stay with somebody, I have watched things for an evening or it still amazes me. Somebody put something up today in relation to how like the surveillance, in relation to Facebook or just general iPhone, smartphone, the kind of thing. It's really interesting. I mean, I was only talking to a friend out loud about Osha. He was talking to me about Osha. We might have been talking on the phone, and then suddenly, like on my YouTube feed, Osha suddenly appears again. Now that's scary. That really is scary because if we're talking down the phone about such things, and that's really. But now Osha, I haven't touched Osha for a long time. I haven't looked. There was no reason for Osha to necessarily come up. Because this is generally how things do. If you press on something and a particular interest on something, it might be a windscreen or tires for your car, anything. You'll pretty soon find these things being advertised towards you. So algorithms or whatever you want to call them, I don't know, but it is quite scary sometimes. Because I myself lived in Glastonbury for 8 years without a mobile phone, completely below the radar, no bank account, and I really enjoyed my time, and I would put myself to the test in relation to, like spending over 9 months on the Glastonbury tour, and I had very small intervals of living in the back of a garden, adjacent to a beautiful space or hill or something, or And being as technology less as possible. I remember re-entering the world of mobile phone 2007 during the Tara campaign. I had succumbed to a MySpace account and an email for the first time in 2008 perhaps. Those things were not part of my reality. And although there's times when I find them useful, it is I'm like everybody else. I could get caught, I'm filming this on an iPhone now, and I can say, okay, brilliant for the technology, but in my reality, I want to get a camera that basically I don't have to rely on the Wi-Fi, and when I want to upload, I upload in a way where I'm connected to the internet for that brief period of time or whatever. But certainly I don't want to be carrying this thing around with me, it's nothing paranoia about it really, tracking device and all these other things, turned on or turned off. There's loads of information about this, You know, even if in airplane mode or the battery's out, Google still know all your movements. So this is interesting, you know, and some people put this to the test. It's not conspiracy or anything like that, but you know, we need to look at this because, you know, in Sweden there's some serious studies done, you know, where boys or young men, you know, you know, from they say from carrying the mobile phone in their pocket, it has lowered the sperm count by huge, you know, more than half, 40% maybe. I can't remember exactly the details, and then the same thing, you know, when you know, your child is sitting with the laptop or the iPad or whatever, you know, they've even got phones now too young. All this electric magnetic frequency, EMFs, is not good. It's not good. The studies are there. So, you know, we need to minimize on our usage of technology, like I was talking about in relation to how we burn, how we use energy. You know, this house I'm in at the moment, it came to me in the way that it came to me, but already now I'm like, no way. I'm not going to have something this size. I don't need something this size, apart from the fact that I need a spare room for my daughter. But again, I'm trying to measure up to what's expected of me rather than like, well, actually, no, this is how I'm going to live my life, and you know, there's too much in the world of you know, bureaucracy and what is and isn't acceptable, you know, for whatever reason, you know. So, you know, ultimately, you know, I'd like to share a space with people where we have shared bills and stuff like that, you know, where life is easier because we're sharing the tasks of making food and stuff together, you know, and get back to happy families, you know, and community and commonality and so on. So this is where I'm heading, you know. Certainly, you know, it's just nuts when I come back to it to see this is why and how. Because I forget sometimes. I get into the bubble too, you know, and I forget about like the reality of what it's like for most people who have to go to work every day to pay the bills, put food on the table, and all the costs that come with that, you know, for a house that they never get to experience and enjoy. And when they do, they're just too tired, you know, they get up and go is gone. And perhaps if the diet isn't good, it's just lunch out and watch the whole world through the box. Now, you know, we don't have to get into the conspiracies of this. You know, what we got to do is just ask ourselves: is this really feeding us? Is this how we want to live our lives? You know, and the entertainment that's there, is it useful to you? You know, I mean, if you watch a David Attenborough program, you know, there's a few things, there's no doubt about it, like, you know, they're inspiring. But you know, they're not worth anything. Like if you know, like knowledge. Knowledge is not worth anything to us unless we do something with it. You know, so having a realization at the station of the cosmos of you know, your life and your light, you know, whether you go and do a peyote or mushrooms or ayahuasca or quite simply have that epiphany once through alcohol or smoke of pot or just whatever, you know, climbing a mountain, you know, having the vision and having the clarity and that momentary like realization, you know, is not worth anything unless you act upon it. So, you know, education in that sense, like learning all these amazing things, you know, is not worth anything unless you apply it. So find what you're really truly interested in and try and free as many birds with one stone as possible within that, where you're helping yourself, you're helping your family, and you're helping the planet, you're helping your community, and it's in commonality with you know, those around you. You know, this is good thinking. It's a good start at the very least, you know. So yeah, this is what I'm was coming through today. This beautiful sunny day, and it's nice to get this to know the sun is coming back. So I hope you get to experience as much sun this year as possible, you know, because it's good for our soul. Peace. People, lots of love and light.